Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Bear with me while I just um, organize myself. Sorry. Let's get some tunes started and I can faff around in the background. Sharing screen would help. Audio library. Okay. Play. Wow, did that tune get you in the feels or what? Maybe not. So, good evening, Silver Bullet, and everyone here who's watching. I hope this will be a nice cathartic type of stream this evening. I think it's one we don't particularly want to admit, or we're a bit avoidant of it. And I think that avoidance, well, we'll touch upon it as we discuss. I have a somewhat of a script, about two and a half pages. We might be here for a while. I'm sorry about that, but I think it's a very important issue to bring up. And why so? Because if people are trying to improve their lives and have better understanding of who they are and what it is they want and where they find fulfillment and their ambitions and their motivations and all this sort of stuff, then you need to pay attention to this one. Because this is laying the groundwork for everything else to follow. So we might use the terms self-love or self-care interchangeably. We won't get too hung up on the definition of what each of those particularly mean. I'm more bringing the attention to the word selfish, and this idea of how it can block or divert your efforts in the wrong sort of ways. So we'll quickly start with a bit of a kind of concise way of looking at it, a bit of a surgical way. So simply, self-care is not being selfish. selfish is when you're taking things away from other people. So people who might not like you attending to your own needs likely will make you feel guilt and shame, and make you try to think you're being selfish when really they are the ones who are being selfish by preventing you from doing something you really need. And not only would you likely feel guilt and shame for daring to think that you might try to actually put yourself first for a change, but you might feel as well as though you're not entitled, undeserving, maybe bad, and that other people are your responsibility, and not yourself foremost. So all of these negative things is not what self-love or care is about, not in the slightest. So do not feel bad for self-loving. You're not being selfish, you're being giving. You are giving to yourself. And this isn't a play or a twist on words. People who call it selfish is where the twisting is coming in, because what they're really saying is they expect you to be sacrificing. So they call you selfish. Are they suggesting everyone else deserves your energy but not you, of all people? So when you stop putting other people's needs in place of your own, then you won't be placing their judgment before yours either. And that's an important thing to bear in mind. The judgments you have of yourself, or the judgments that people cast upon you, are based on the judgments that you have of yourself. And so if you think of yourself more kindly, then whatever kind of shaming language they try and throw at you, their words won't matter. They won't hurt you. They only hurt you because somewhere inside you believe it aligns with your judgment of how you see yourself. And that, again, is another reason why self-love is important. Now, self-love requires you to have some esteem to a degree. You're not going to really care about, you're not going to provide yourself care if you don't really think much of, if you don't care about yourself. It is not being narcissistic. Self-love protects you from the narcissist. Narcissists don't have any self-esteem, and they hate people who have self-love because it creates a boundary. So they are the ones who might typically call you selfish, and maybe go so far as to say you're abusing them by denying them of your attention, because that fuel that they're trying to extract doesn't belong to them. It is your fuel. It is what you deserve. And unfortunately, if you haven't been looking after yourself, you've been exporting it out to the narcissist or other toxic people, or people in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily malicious. Now the thing is, but I want to sort of illustrate the dangers of not providing yourself with self-love, and this is why it's again important. You don't skim out on this or think this is being weak or mushy or something like that. If you skip out on this, you're exposing yourself to the vulnerability to people like narcissists, because they can sniff out those who are in need of, well, who aren't addressing their self-love. It's available, they see it, so they're going to try and take it, and in doing so they will insert themselves as the gatekeeper to that. So once they get their foot in the door, now you're going to be big trouble. Because what will happen is, if they are the gatekeeper, preventing you access now to giving yourself some care and attention, you'll believe that it's only through the narcissist that you can receive the love you desperately are needing. And it will prevent you from leaving the narcissist or rejecting them out of your life. So it's a very sneaky taking advantage of people, what the narcissists are doing there in that regard. And so it is not hard, therefore, for abusive people to use love or self-care as a tool for their abuse. Quite a perversion of the concept. Now, to you, you might feel like you are giving love to someone else. You're caring for a narcissist or whatever. But to them, it's simply supply. The narcissist isn't receptive to love. It's not a currency they're interested in. So really, what that would mean, therefore, is that if you were to be trying to show some love to someone, then and they're more in the realm of being abusive, essentially your love isn't really going anywhere. And because it's not appreciated, you'll tend to believe you need to output some more, that you're not doing enough. And maybe you might say to yourself something like, I will just love them more. But the more you give, the likelihood is you'll probably feel more empty and hollow. And this isn't what love is it? We might not have a proper understanding of defining what it is, but we can tell easier what it's not. And I would not call that kind of sacrifice as a form of love. I would describe it more as slavery. I'll do more in hopes my master will treat me better. And so with that, you'll endure more pain and believe that you must suffer. The more and the more this must mean to you, to then be able to feel like you finally deserve to be loved. Rationally, do you really have to be deserving to be allowed to receive love you give to yourself? I mean, we talk about unconditional love, and that is what is being suggested there, that you don't have to feel like you deserve it. You already are, and you already do deserve to love yourself from the get-go. There doesn't need to be any conditions in place for you to do this for yourself. Now, at some point, I'll be doing another stream referring to suffering and happiness, this dichotomy, and how that is also a tricky area that needs navigating. Be careful trying to equate the degree in which you suffer to your happiness is essentially what it is in a nutshell. And I suspect a lot of people already have experience of that, feeling like they need to endure more pain in order to feel some kind of level of love and care. And if they ever do get a cookie or a pat on the back, it's very short-lived. So this isn't healthy. This isn't a healthy way of being. And it becomes a testimony of how you've been conditioned. Now, when you have this awareness, and we're going to go into more and more detail about this, by knowing this now, it's not too hard to then figure out how to love yourself, because there's a good chance it's never been really practiced before, and so you don't know where to begin or recognize when you are actually being nice and kind to yourself, and when you're also being mean and harsh and treating yourself with self-harm. And that's the sad part, where there's such a confusion that to love it's a switcheroo, where you feel guilt for loving yourself, and you feel supposedly better the more suffering you put yourself through unnecessarily at that. So we need to rectify this. So that leads us into the next section, a wrong message. The wrong message being said. Self-care isn't about adornment, vanity, indulgence. It is not to prevent being sensitive by either wrapping yourself in bubble wrap or hiding behind a shield of virtue. It can be frightening to acknowledge you have vulnerabilities as part of who you are. It could be seen as weakness. But if we agree that strength is found in our weakest links, then caring for such areas means we can be stronger by being attentive without a false sense of security. So don't be ashamed or embarrassed or feel it's a sign of weakness to be vulnerable. There is a strength in there you won't find anywhere else. So I don't care about how much bravado or macho BS and peacocking. To me, that is not a sign of strength. Rather, that is a sign of cowardice. So someone, and another example of self-preservation is someone who always believes everything is fine and dandy, because they probably wouldn't like the idea that things are beyond their control. And this isn't caring for yourself, it's trying to protect yourself by escaping into a delusion of pristine as a way of coping. And being pristine implies or infers that typically this will be involving perfectionism with a strong defense of denial and ego defenses. So songs like Always Look on the Bright Side of Life might, mask the areas that really you need to attend to. Now, I don't mean wallow in your depression and be all doom and gloom, but there is a level of as part of processing where you have to kind of sit with some of these feelings and thoughts and become acquainted with them in order for you to then be able to have compassion towards it. So it's not a place where it's not a final destination of depression. It's a transition and helps direct you in the right way out of that funk. It's like, you're down deep in a hole and you have to dig your way out, but unless you know which way is up, you don't know if you're digging yourself deeper. So by understanding your surroundings of where you are, you can orientate yourself, and then you can proceed in the correct direction out of it. So when we tell men to be selfish, I worry we're telling them to take instead of give to themselves. And this becomes a double-edged sacrifice, because not only are you telling them to take from other people that something that isn't of use to them in this state particularly, but you also take away their ability to look after themselves. No love or care is getting to the self with this attitude of being selfish. So a simple give yourself some care or love may be better to say. No need to be saying selfish. But it's okay if it's been said. This is part of the learning curve. And I know people mean well. And with what we were just mentioning about how you're conditioned to sort of be cruel to yourself, then in a way, it's not surprising you would maybe say words such as selfish. You're kind of bound to say it because life has been hard on you. And this is how you've been conditioned to think of yourself, that you're being selfish. So hence with this stream, we're trying to be precise with these words because they can be said very easily without realizing what we're programming ourselves with. A MGTOW man would not want to be selfish. He cannot go his own way if he's needing to take that which does not belong to him. Self-love is non-transferable. I cannot give you my self-love and for you to receive it. It is not compatible. Self-love is not configured in that sort of way. It is only for that person. And we'll cover more about the differences in the types of self-love, which I think you might find quite interesting. So what is it really then, self-love? What is this care? Well, it's taking responsibility. It might mean doing things you don't like or that make you uncomfortable, but you do it anyway because you want things that are good for you. And this is where that esteem comes back in. So as long as you start off with the goal of I care about myself enough to do whatever it takes as part of that, then it doesn't really matter what challenges you have before you. That determination will see you through, whether it's improving your diet, improving your fitness, getting off drugs and booze, getting rid of bad habits, changing your environment, whatever obstacle, nothing can stop someone who has that degree of esteem, and because you do matter. And obviously, if you want to achieve other things in life, you're going to need yourself. You're going to need you by your side to help see you through. So it really is if you want to be a bit blunt, a bit kind of, you can look at it as a wise investment. Do you want to be stuck with someone who is traumatized and in pain and suffering, or do you want to be stuck with someone who is actually on your team and wants what's good for you, even at the times of self-doubt and the low times? So self-love and care, not only is it you have to be okay with being vulnerable and reassure yourself that this isn't going to be the end of you. You need to have that trust and faith in yourself. And we're going to notice there's a lot of character traits built in with this, very somewhat stoic lessons. to trust even in the face of self-doubt, to be able to reassure your heaviest of anxieties. These aren't easy things, especially when it's something that's never really been practiced or implemented in any way. And so it can be very scary and daunting. So I appreciate self-love. It can be said with a kind of instant click of the finger expectation, and it's not going to be an easy thing to do. But it does get easier, and I've been learning this lesson quite a bit recently. So it means not to beat yourself down because you think and feel it's something you don't deserve. If this is your belief so far and you're speaking to yourself with this bad programming, then that needs to stop immediately. That means having to pause and have a conscious awareness of a mindfulness of how it is you are speaking to yourself or thinking of yourself. What is the image or the appearance? What is it you see? And this is where some self-reflection would come in. It also brings you a step closer to authenticity and honesty, and that becomes a requirement to self-care. Now, how important is honesty and authenticity? Mighty important. So you cannot be an authentic person, you cannot be an honest person if you are not treating yourself with self-care and kindness and compassion and love. And it shows through people, like the bravado and the macho nonce you see, these performances. These aren't authentic ways of being. It's a smoke and mirrors to make up for the lack thereof of actually thinking kindly of yourself. And with everything being said so far, it might mean also having to be humble in knowing you are not perfect. Even though self-love and care might not have been modeled to you by parents or communities, it is fundamentally something only you can do for yourself. No one is going to do that for you, and you haven't done so far during all this time. So a bit of discovery, and there isn't a set way about doing things. And this is why it is tailored just for you, calibrated just for you, and therefore makes it impossible to give your self-love to someone else, because by definition that is not their self-love, that's your self-love you're trying to give them. Some other words that kind of encompass this idea of self-love will be acceptance, some self-soothing, empathy, not self-pity, being seen, validated, and grieving. And this might sound a little silly, but you might feel with a bit of time that, it's like being reborn. Or maybe more accurately would be, now you are allowed to be born for the first time, allowed to exist unapologetically. So what would that mean? Who were you before this then? Like, if only now you are treating yourself as an actual human being, an actual real person, what were you doing before? Probably something like you were denying yourself from existing. Now you can live, and now you can be free. So before I move into the next one, let me just check who's in the chat. Donald John's here, Iridium Kush, Outlaw, Woody Johnson, Rusty Rivers. Oh, guys, great to see you all here. David Smith's here. GM's here. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I really appreciate everyone here, and I appreciate that it might have been a bit of short notice. Oh, JR's here. I see you there. Okay, now here's something interesting. I need to work on this idea a little bit further, but the bones of it is this. There are different types of self-love. There is what I haven't got the best of words for it, but I'm kind of settling on the idea of you've got self-love, you've got additional love, and you've got substitute love. So try and bear with me here because it might be a bit confusing, disorientating, but only you can give you self-love, and only you does your self-love belong to. Love you give to other people can only ever be either additional love or substituted love. Now, if you have indeed got self-love for yourself, you will never ever be able to give that to someone else, even if you wanted to, because it's not compatible, it's not configured for them. You can only give them additional love, or additional love that will be received as a substitute. So they've kind of transformed your additional love to substitute theirs. When a man gives to himself, he is not taken away anything or denying from a woman, because it was never hers to have. Which is why we might say things like, you don't owe them anything, meaning you don't owe them self-love, because they have to do that for themselves. Yours will not fill in that gap. He can give his additional love to her. He is not giving her self, he is not taking her self-love and then returning it back to her. Because if he's got self-love, he doesn't, what is he going to do with a type of love that is not compatible with him? So he wouldn't have taken it and then given it back to her. This is what the narcissist would do, is take your heart and pretend it's theirs. And you think, oh, the narcissist loves me. No, they've just ripped out your heart and fooled you into thinking. So people who don't have their own self-love, there's a deficit there. May try to substitute it with the additional love they get from other people. Or even worse, they may try and take the self-love that doesn't belong to them and try and morph it into fuel and supply. And you see this unfulfillment very well with people who are seeking validation or attention. And that is what they're attempting to do. They are trying to substitute self-love. If you fix this problem anyway of recognizing what kind of love is being exchanged and where it belongs, where it's coming from, then this problem of seeking validation and attention doesn't really become an issue anymore. You won't need it. Why do you need, if you care for yourself and you've got your own self-esteem and you are self-generating and independent, you're capable of doing that for yourself, then you don't need anyone to validate you, because you've done that on your own accord. And you don't need anyone else's attention, because you are giving yourself the attention you need. So you're very sustainable. What was the other word I used earlier on? Well, one of the other words I used earlier on would fit in here as well. So now we're going to move on to people who really do love you. How do you know who's really your friend here? Someone who loves you, a friend, relative, or whatever, spouse or whatever, will understand and allow you to self-love. They wouldn't say things to you like you're being selfish. Instead, they might say something like, he needs some time to himself, or maybe he needs an ear to listen to him. And they would be happy for you and pleased to see that you're taking care of yourself. If you want love from others, first of all, which type are we talking about here? Are you trying to steal someone's self-love, or are you trying to take their additional love, or are you looking for a substitute love? In any case, you must first love you. You must love yourself first. If they try to love you, so if you're not loving yourself first, and someone tries to give you additional love, then it would ricochet, because you aren't calibrated to receive it. Even though you might be asking for it, it wouldn't actually penetrate into you because you're not calibrated to receive it. You're trying to fill in something with a substitute or additional, and so you won't recognize it anyway. And to you, this might be something like, it might appear as tough love, and you might think they're being mean to you because in your head, being mean is the norm. You're used to being mean, you're used to being hard and mean to yourself, so you think everyone else who is trying to love you is also being mean to you. So misinterpretations, and this has all become because of calibration or configuration. So obviously that's more for a kind of relationship dynamic going on. Coming back to the self. So why might you refrain from trying to care for yourself? Why might you be unmotivated? Now, we already covered some of the ideas and concepts why this might be a case. Essentially, low self-esteem, and you don't feel like you deserve it. But to make things a bit more conceptualized, you blame yourself because probably you were denied in childhood in some shape or form. So you grow up thinking there's something wrong with you, and thus you reject the self. And there you are trying to put some self-love into a self which has been rejected. So we can see how things aren't landing where they should be landing. Society has played a part in all of this as well. You have been cultured to put other people first, and so if you step back and say, "Well, enough is enough," that breaks the status quo, and bingo, you're now looked at as a bad guy, or called selfish, for example. Now, when you have low self-esteem, and this could be for other reasons why you might have low self-esteem, so this is a compounded issue. But self-esteem will make you much more judgmental of yourself, much more self-criticizing. You feel worse, you feel less deserving of love, let alone self-love. And you feel probably wrong to have any wants and needs of your own. And there's this expectation that you must sacrifice. Now, this might sound a little bit repetitive, but so if this is the kind of dogma that if this is your operating system that you're going with, even though you might be expecting to be rewarded for your suffering, you're going to find that it comes as to a disappointment. To hope to receive love, you must first be placed on the altar and kill yourself. And because this isn't addressing your needs, you output more in desperation of getting a crumb of validation. One day you may be told, okay, fine, you have sacrificed well today. You're a good slave. But here's a bit of, you've been obedient. Uh, we will allow you to exist. But never do you actually exist. And that's the thing. Because you never allowed yourself to exist. They have no say or authority in that regard. And this is where we make a mistake thinking that we are only allowed to be given, we are only allowed to be with the permission of other people. Screw those other people. You can be if you choose to. You don't need their approval to exist. Now, the funny thing here, therefore, is your motivation was never the problem here, as we have just described. Clearly, you can be very motivated, very motivated to destroy yourself. So, what it is really is that motivation is directed in the wrong way. So, don't think to yourself that, oh, I lack the motivation. No, you do have, you have it in you. You already got everything you need. You've already got the acceptance. You've already got the validation. You've already got the motivation. You already got the confidence. It's just been misplaced. It's been miscalibrated. It's pointing in the wrong direction. And this is the refinement in honing in your identity of who you are as a person. And so with all of this, eventually, yes, you'll get a much better understanding of who it is you really are. And this is what self-love brings you. It's the gift. This is the reward, really. This is the for all that effort. It's not just so that you feel better. It's a necessity. It grants you the permission to exist independent of those around you. You can be in touch with yourself. Because you cannot know who you are if you're too busy treating yourself unkindly. You no longer need their permission to be. You can now give yourself the love that you so desperately need and seek. And it isn't something that is hung over you, trying to make you sacrifice, like an obligation, or like a, what do you call it I call it blood money, like buying a person. You're not guilted into owing. You don't owe anyone anything for this. And you'll probably find there are plenty of other areas in life where probably you have sacrificed as well, when you shouldn't have. Things like your attention going to trolls, or roasting, or drinking in excess, drugs, maybe watching TV, gambling. There's plenty of damaging behaviors where you are sacrificing yourself when you look at it differently. And so if you desire to go your own way, to be happy, in the end, you may find that it was never far away. So, dear MGTOW, please understand this topic well. Loving other people. If you do want to extend your love, remember, you keep that for yourself. What you're providing here is an extension, or what I'm calling as additional love. If you want to give to someone additional love, to add on top of their own self-love, then obviously you need to have love for yourself first. So if all this time you thought you were loving someone, but you didn't have this clarification in mind, then in truth, you probably weren't really loving them with the best of, in the best of ways. Maybe you were helping to validate, maybe you're helping to coddle, or something else, but we see that self-love doesn't necessarily have to be kind words. You could, and I don't literally go around doing this, please, but I mean, you could slap someone around the face with compassion, you know, like slap some sense into them, and that might be the kind of love they need. So obviously there's a bit of discernment, another popular word here we like to use. And in likelihood, because of this um, unawareness of the type of calibrated love they need to receive, what you are trying to project out onto them probably says more about you than it does them. So you're not sure what they need. You think maybe they need a cuddle. Well, there's probably a good chance that maybe that's you that feels like you wanted a cuddle. You know to yourself it's what would make you feel better. So you assume, well, if it makes me feel better, it's going to make them feel better. Um, and this careless way of trying to love people without the right perimeters and boundaries in place ends up basically with you throwing your love out, this additional love, like a hollow boomerang, and it will ricochet off them because it's not penetrating and getting in, and it will just come back to you empty. And besides, what help will that be? What help can you be if you can't even help yourself? Now, when you get all this in your mind and organized and structured, there's a good chance you'll probably find that when you are trying to be helpful to someone, showing them some care and compassion and self love, it'll be that because it's now calibrated, it will be that much more effective, and you'll actually be helping them how in a way that they need it rather than how they want it. And it'll be much more effective, yeah. And it'll be much more better structure, much more better boundaries. It'll be safer as well. So we're coming up to the end. So I've got a quick few tips, but this might come in. I might redo this last section as a more thorough thing, but just to throw some tips out there anyway. So you have to put a conscious effort to allow yourself self-care. You can't just say the magic words and you'll do it. You need to have a conscious effort to want to do this. That means commitment. That means a bit of motivation or determination, because you're going to have to change what was automatic bad behavior. So you have to be mindful to allocate yourself some time, because if normally you're automatic, just Mirandaing around during the day, not really caring about yourself, you'll be oblivious to when you need to do this self-care thing. You need to be able to catch yourself in moments where, um, now's the time to take a breath or step out, exit a situation, do what you need to. You'll have to develop protocols and strategies. Let's say you're a work-orientated type of person, and you think to yourself, like, I can't take any time off to do any self-care. That seems like a waste of time, or so much time um, redirected. Well, think about how much more of an effective worker you'll be if you have looked after yourself better. And start to turn this automation of bad habits into better good habits, and that will make it easier the more you practice it and the less consciously aware you'll have to be about doing it, because you'll be changing the automation of it. So include things. So include things and activities and whatever protocols that you might not be in the mood for. You might not be in the mood to do some self-care, but you know it's good for you and you're going to do it anyway. Tell yourself the truth. Don't be glum about it. Use it as direction to where you need to put your attention. Your feelings are indicators, they are messages, they are trying to tell you something is wrong. You need to understand to interpret this emotional language so that you can utilize it correctly, and it will guide you far better than anything I could say here tonight. And the final tip I'll have for now is adjust the language you use to yourself. So just speak to yourself more kindly, because you deserve it. And we have reached the end of this discussion. So I hope this gives people Coach Buttle. Good to see Red Pill in the wind. Peng is here. Oh, so many of you guys. I hope this has been a useful stream. I know it can kind of sound like a hippy dippy, mushy, fuzzy wuzzy, vomit sort of. I was talking about love. Oh God, but no, it's a very important and often overlooked, and that, and because of that sort of sentiment of he's being a sissy, probably one of the biggest mistakes. No wonder you have so many people who are now struggling. Think about what you see in the community spaces with all this so-called red pill knowledge and all these mentors and channels and advice and communities growing. How is it there is this sensation of despair, of anxiety and depression? It doesn't make sense. Something is afoot here, and what is it? Is people are trying to dig themselves out of a hole, and they're going further down. They need to be calibrated. And with self-love, self-care, know thyself, discover yourself, be honest and true, you'll have a better chance at it. So thank you all for being here. Take care. Take some time for yourself. Treat yourself. You deserve it. And all the best. Until next time.